Hey, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural 2022 episode of The Good, the Bad, and the True. It's your girl, Naya Angel, coming through with my co-host and homie for life, Mr. PAT. What's up, sir?
What up? What up? What's good, Miss Naya Angel? What's good, everybody out
Oh,
there?
oh, man, it has been a crazy start to this year so far. A
Yes, it
lot
has.
going There's a lot going on in the world right now, sir. A lot going
Oh,
on.
yeah. A whole lot.
We're gonna do our best though to keep it gutter how we do and talk about some of the realest topics happening right now for the Black community. And before we jump into it, we want to, of course, give a shout out to our co-host E-Man, who recently was struck with a devastating event. His family lost everything in a house fire. E-Man, as always, we are with you. We
Yes, we
love
are.
you. We support you. We're here if you need anything. And to our listeners and supporters out there who would love to bless and support, please feel free to reach out to him at e.woo.athletics@gmail.com, or you can bless and support him financially if you are fit at Woo Athletics. So that's going to be the money sign and Woo Athletics on Cash App. And of course, we'll also leave a GoFundMe that was created to help out the family when we post the link of this recording. E-Man, as always, love you, bro. We're going to hold things
Yep.
down until you get back and you have that triumphant return. We can't wait for it, sir.
Yeah, we can't wait.
So, all right, sir, do we have a lot to talk about?
Yeah, we got quite a few things to talk about.
To say the least, it's just we got people going wild all over Twitter and social media and ex-presidents dropping their own social media platforms and Black History Month and Kanye.
Yeah.
2020 has come out swinging, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Definitely came out swinging. That's the perfect way to put it.
Definitely. So we're going to jump into some interesting topics, to say the least, here, and we're going to do things a little different with it being you and I. We'll go ahead and jump into these conversations, and we're going to give this you starting off the discussion topics and etc.
Yep.
And switch things up this year.
That's right. I'll be the one asking the questions, and well, of course, Naya will be the one to respond, and then I'm going to respond back, and we're going to have a great dialogue. Overall, we're going to have a great conversation, and that's what it's going to be.
Love it, sir. All right. So, what is the first topic on our plate tonight?
All right. The first topic, well, I should say the first question is Black History Month just another part of American capitalism?
Ooh, man, that's a great question. That's
right.
a really great question. So I really, for me, I think this is definitely one that is close to me and close to my heart to speak on, because I've been saying for years exactly that, that Black History Month is at this point just another part of American capitalism, and specifically a way for them to capitalize off of Black folks and other races who, call themselves our partners or supporters and etc., who are feeling obligated to support. Right. Mm-hmm. So, the reality is straightforward. It most certainly is that. However, that doesn't mean that we also shouldn't take advantage of it at the same time. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in reality, Black people and their accomplishments and contributions to society obviously should be highlighted all year long.
All
And
day.
in my family and household, they are,
Yeah,
right?
all
Like
day, every day.
Exactly. It's not like, okay, for 28 days out of the year, shortest month of the year, of course. That's the only time we're going to focus on Black history. No, in this family, we are discussing the accomplishments, the contributions throughout the year as appropriate, whenever, however, because of course, we appreciate all of those who came before us that paved the way for us to even do what we're doing right now, this platform. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to have this podcast, have this discussion without some of the many sacrifices of folks before us.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So definitely, for me, Black History Month is non-existent. It's Black History Year. It's Black History existence in general. We are always appreciative of all the sacrifices those before us made. However, since it's going to happen, since we know that people are going to take advantage of the empathy that other races will try to exude for this period of time, why shouldn't Black folks also capitalize on it as well? I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to uplift our businesses and et cetera that otherwise throughout the year would not have such easily funded advertising. Right. i.e., all of these social media sites and et cetera, they want to talk about Black businesses and all of that stuff this month. Okay, use that opportunity to capitalize on that free advertisement. Get your businesses out there, call into those radio stations that any other time of the year might not think twice about advertising your business. Get that free media out there. Utilize.
Oh yeah.
Right?
You gotta use that free media, do some promo for free, marketing for free. Yeah. We need to do all that. Yep.
Exactly. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? We know the truth. A lot of people want to live in this world of naivety where everything is equal now. Everything is not fucking equal.
Bullshit.
And we know that, right?
That post-racial bullshit.
Exactly. We're not there. So like we can cut the shit with that. But the reality of it is, we have to use the tools that are made available to us. Does that make it right? Absolutely not. Right. And they know what they're doing with this shit. I mean, if you think about it, it's actually rather insulting. Right? Because we're still the only one of a few groups. I'm going to say not only, but one of a few groups who haven't even received any appropriate form of reparations yet.
Oh, I mean, boy.
Native Americans have, Japanese Americans have as tributes towards, the World War II internment camps. But what does Black people have received? Affirmative action? I mean, what good is that doing when we're still in the same place almost as we were when that was first presented?
Right.
I mean, for some in power, it's not even a consideration. And they make the most absolute moot arguments when it comes to reparations that, it's because we're not the ones who actually suffered. Okay, the same could be said about, Native Americans and Japanese Americans and et cetera, who have received reparations. And don't get me wrong, I don't want anyone to come for me. I'm not saying that those groups weren't deserving of that. Of course they were, but that's the point, fine. Right? Mm-hmm. All of us were, right? But yet we're the group who are still the most disenfranchised. We still have to fight to have basic rights like being able to walk down the damn street without worrying about losing our lives for that. I mean, the reality of it is there are a lot of folks who still, look at these other races or these other minorities as tolerable minorities. Whereas Black people, you know what I mean? Like they're the ideal minority.
Right. Okay.
Whereas Black people are looked at as the problematic minority, right? We're too in their face. We're not just content with what's been given to us. And so when you think about that, and you think about all of the different just avenues that are provided to folks in other groups. I mean, loans, business loans are easier to obtain. Scholarships are easier to obtain. I mean, that's obvious, right? And anyone who's denying that is choosing to be willfully ignorant in that subject, right?
Yeah.
So, I said all that to say, yeah, it's bullshit at the end of the day, right? It's about capitalism. It's about those powers to be taking advantage of the empathy that's being thrown around for 28 days out of the fucking year. And so, they're going to capitalize off it. They're going to do what they want to do. Do they actually give a fuck? Maybe some of them, but I would say the numbers are few. But that doesn't mean very few, right? But that doesn't mean this isn't the opportunity for Black people to also profit from that in a specific way. I'm not saying ignore that is bullshit. It's obvious to us. And for those who are conscious of it, at the end of the day, all we can do is say, we see you. We see what you're doing. We recognize the bullshit, but we're going to play along because it's going to be mutually beneficial to do so. You know what I mean?
True.
So the answer to me is that, yes, it is definitely a representation of American capitalism. And, we're still not equivalent to those who consider other folks to be tolerable minorities where we are. And this is really just a slap in the face to us in the face of not actually giving us the appropriate reparations that we're due. So, at the end of the day, we just got to do what we can do, capitalize the way we can, profit from it the way we can, but continue to be aware, continue to be conscious, continue to, advocate for Black history outside of this bullshit as 20, I'm not even going to call it a month. It's 28 days, every other 28 days, every other month in the calendar year has 30 days at least in it. It's not even a month. This is 28 days.
28, unless there's a leap year and you get that.
Less than right, exactly. It's not even a leap year. So, I mean, whatever. But, at the end of the day, we're going to make it do what it do because that's who we are. We're perseverance and we're the truest representation of perseverance. And so we'll keep it pushing. But that's my thoughts on that, sir.
Wow. Well, yeah, definitely. I agree with everything you said. What I would add to that, or maybe not even add, I'm probably just going to, give my spin on things or my spin on what you said. So I think two things could exist at the same time. So we can celebrate Black History Month, but at the same time, acknowledge that Black history is way more than just a month. Like the way I look at it, I always say Black history 24/7, 365. Right. Black history 24/7, 365. That's pretty much how I look at it. That's my mantra. Because I'm always studying Black history. I'm always looking at Black history. I don't wait for February to come and then I say, oh, well, let me go dive a little bit more and learn a little bit more about Black history. No, fuck that. Like I'm always, it doesn't matter if it's March, April, May, it doesn't matter. It could be August, December. It doesn't matter. I'm always doing my research. I'm learning about new people, new things. I'm always learning about Black history. So yeah, Black History Month to me is not really, it's not that big of a deal in that regard. But at the same time, yeah, let's have it. It's a good thing to have because, of course, there's people outside of us, white, Asian, Latino, even some Black people who just, they don't really really do the research or look deeper into Black history outside of February. So Black History Month is there for those people, for the most part, to, I guess, kick off their consciousness a little bit, to maybe possibly want to look a little bit deeper, to dive a little bit deeper. So, you know, like I said, there's two things that could exist at one time. We could acknowledge that, okay, cool, there's Black History Month. All right, we know it's in February, the shortest month of the year. You know, that's some bullshit, but whatever. But it's there. But at the same time, but at the same time, it's more than just a month. Black history is forever. Black history is all day, every day, 24/7, 365. It's not just relegated to a month, especially the shortest month of the year. Yeah. And to answer the question directly, it is another part of American capitalism. I mean, let's just be real. It is another part of American capitalism, because the way I see it, and really the way it is, it's really the major white-owned corporations that are profiting the most. If we're talking economics, really, it's the corporations, the big retailers, you know, the big giants, basically, that are able to do their advertising for Black History Month. They're able to sell clothes, you know, they're able to sell merchandise, whatever they can sell based on Black History Month. They're the ones who get all the profit. You know, Black History Month, it's not even a month where Black business is profit because of Black History Month, but let's be real here. It's really the major corporations, like I said, the big retailers, that are going to profit the most off of Black History Month.
Absolutely right, sir. Totally agree there.
You know, it is just another part of American capitalism. It's basically just business as usual. It's that February is just that month where they can kind of, and not even kind of, they can adopt a whole social justice attitude or persona and act like they care about racism and trying to stop racism. But at the end of the day, it's really just another way for them to just sell more merchandise and capitalize off of Black people, really.
Exactly. Because if they really gave a shit, it would be all year round that this merchandise would be available. It would be all year round that you would see their camaraderie standing with us. The only time you're going to hear some of these places even mention Black Lives Matter or any other form of support towards the Black community is during Black History 28 days.
Right.
I refuse to acknowledge that shit as a month. It ain't no fucking month. It's 28 days.
You're right. We could say, Black History 28 days. Or on a leap year, 29 days.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So those 28 to 29 days is just these big businesses profiting the most off of Black history, while Black people in general don't really profit off of it economically anyway. You know, that we might get recognition. People are going to recognize us more. They're going to recognize our ancestors and our historical figures and our elders. They're going to recognize them more. But when it's all said and done, once those 28 to 29 days are up, they're done. You know, it's on to the next thing. It's just
so right. You are so right.
Yeah, it's just that Black history is part of the machine, part of the American capitalist machine. It's just part of that conveyor belt, because once Black History Month is over, it's on to the next thing. It's just a constant thing.
They have to show they tried, right? Or to show they participated. But do they actually give a fuck? No.
Right, exactly. And then going back to what you were saying about, different groups receiving their reparations, and which is true, which they have, whether it be the Native Americans, the Japanese. I know there's other groups that have received some form of reparations as well. Black people definitely need to receive reparations.
Yeah.
Black Americans definitely are way overdue for reparations. But of course, like you mentioned, when it comes down to Black people in America receiving reparations, it's basically just a lot of excuses that come up. And what I've seen that the powers that be do is they engage in a lot of tokenism. They they're cool with having a token Negro in some high position somewhere in politics or whatever, and they'll say, oh well, there's a Black person in this political position, or you have Black representation. Yeah, you have Black representation in this area, but it's not helping the collective of Black people. It's basically a bunch of tokenism, and that's another thing that Black History Month is just, okay, yeah, we acknowledge you, we see you, and that's pretty much it. But as far as economics, finance, tangibles, they're not about that. They're not about nope. So yeah, that's another thing that irks me about Black History Month, is that part of it. It's the tokenism part of it. It's just, hey, we see you, we acknowledge you. It's basically like Juneteenth also. Juneteenth is pretty much in that realm also. It's like, hey, well, we gave you a holiday. We're acknowledging you. We're acknowledging that you exist. So what are you complaining about? So it's basically that.
Ooh, you said something with that one too.
Yeah,
it's so funny because I was just talking to someone the other day about Juneteenth, and don't get me wrong, I am very much. I would say that I'm more so comfortable with Juneteenth than I am Black History Month, because I think to a certain extent, Juneteenth is seen as more authentic than Black History Month, right? For a lot of people, at least a lot of people that I know, a lot of people identify with Juneteenth more so than, say, Black History Month or July 4th. So from that perspective, I appreciate that, because it's kind of serving as a catalyst for people to become more aware, even if it is still somewhat a foundation of capitalism, more so than anything, because it is resonating with people as being more authentic. It is allowing for people to open their minds up and expand their minds a little bit more, in my opinion, than, say, Black History Month or, definitely July 4th. Most people I know, Black people I know, have totally stepped away from the traditional celebrations of July 4th.
Myself included.
Exactly. Same. It's more so a cookout, right? Like, we just want to cook out and chill with fam and play some spades. And, know what I'm saying? Right. Enjoy being Black and American, right? But it's definitely one of those things where I think your point is absolutely valid. Like, Juneteenth is another one where it's great. The sentimentism behind it is great, right? But at the same time, it is still, at the end of the day, a capitalist way to pacify Black people.
Perfect word, right? Pacify. Yep. Yeah,
it is. That's really the use of it right now. Now, it's an opportunity to actually expand that use for Black people, because again, it's opening up the mind, since people are identifying it as a little more authentic than July 4th and Black History Month. But you are spot on that it too is also a catalyst for capitalism. So definitely agree with you there.
Yep. And yes, indeed. I mean, it's good to have it. And just like with Black History Month, I see it the same way. The two things could exist. I could acknowledge that Juneteenth is good to have, but at the same time, look, I see the bullshit also with that. Right. I see the tokenism with that too. And it just gets to a point where I'm just like, okay, y'all just need to come up off the reparations. I'm gonna just put it simple and plain.
Right.
You know, descendants of American slaves need their reparations straight up.
Exactly.
You know, so you know, that's really all I could say to that is, okay, y'all keep doing these things to like you said, pacify Black people, but it's enough with the pacifying. Let's get down to the tangibles. Get down to the tangibles. So, yeah.
Exactly. Totally agree. Definitely agree with you on that topic, sir. I think for the most part, we see through it, right?
Right. we see through the bullshit.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly right. We see through the bullshit. Like we get it. You know, y'all can technically say that you've been supportive of, you know, Black history and what we've contributed, but the reality of it is it's tokenism. I think that's definitely a great word. So we are on the same page, sir.
Yes, we are.
Awesome. All right. So next topic. You know what's crazy is it's like it was like actually a good segue into the next topic.
yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's still dealing with Black, you know, the racial stuff. You know, it's still dealing with blackness, and then of course later on we're gonna get to the whiteness and, you know, all that good stuff. So yeah, next question is, was Whoopi Goldberg being suspended from The View her Negro wake-up call?
Sir, let me tell you, when I saw this question and I got some, so I was already aware of what have occurred, but like definitely took the opportunity to deep dive into this. And I was like, man, this question was on the money. because at the end of the day, I mean, for me, this is a clear cut, abso-fucking-lutely, right? It's just, of course it was that. And furthermore, she was being made an example of. So to directly answer the question, was Whoopi Goldberg being suspended from The View her Negro wake-up call? My answer is, of course. And furthermore, she was being made an example of. Because I mean, in all honesty, this was actually an eye-opening situation for some of those naive people who think that we're just so far along in society compared to where we used to be. Because what this really did was shine a light on the reality of just how much more sacred things are to those who empower and their abilities to enforce it when they want to, which shows that they are electing to not enforce issues that are important to the Black community.
Right.
Let me just elaborate a little bit there. Whoopi Goldberg makes a comment about the Holocaust. Everyone as far as the powers to be, loses their shit. She's suspended for 2 weeks. But people make comments about slavery, against slavery, and etc. all the fucking time. And very rarely do we see this kind of punishment. Very rarely are they made to hold this kind of atonement as Whoopi Goldberg was. That's crazy to me. Anyone who is choosing to ignore that, you are choosing to be willfully ignorant on this subject. Because I mean, anyone in the free world can make a comment about slavery, and you know, if they might get like a slap on the wrist or you know, you can't do that, or some kind of politically correct trope, right? But are they going to be ostracized and just, you know, demonized and cancel culture, ready to just jump in and all of that stuff as quickly as Whoopi was? Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. And the reality of it is that's because this is a show that the powers that be are going, it's a reminder is what it is, that the powers that be are still in control of our narratives. They're still in control of how we can think to a certain extent. Yeah, you can have these thoughts. You can think that as much as you want to, but don't you say it. You know what I mean? Like it shows the limitations of our freedom. Mm-hmm. That's the reality of it. And I mean, if you go back to the matter at hand, what she said is not, in my opinion, being construed the way she intended. Because the reality is the Holocaust was about the hatred of anyone non-German that the Germans in power at the time determined to not be equivalent to them, and who contained a certain amount of power and wealth that those Germans felt belonged to them. That's the reality of it. That was the general consensus for the Holocaust. I mean, this is not anything new that any other historian hasn't already said. That's whether they're white, black, Spanish, or not. Historians have been saying for the long time, this was about German narcissism. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, Whoopi Goldberg says it's not about race, even though historians have been saying for years and years and years that the Holocaust was about German narcissism and everybody loses their shit. I mean, make it make sense. That doesn't make any sense. This has been, construed this way by so many people. But now all of a sudden, Whoopi Goldberg is a demon from hell who doesn't empathize with Holocaust victims. That's not what happened. That's not what she said. That's not what happened. That's not what she said. People ran with their emotions because she had the audacity as a Black person to say anything about the Holocaust. That's the reality of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, but the truth of the matter is, if you do any historical research. And keep in mind, this is historical research that is being output by the powers to be, the same folks who reprimanded Whoopi Goldberg. Because you know me, in my opinion, you even got to take historical research with a grain of salt, right? Because it's still what they put out.
Right, still what they put out. Exactly.
It's still what they put out. Right. So I've always said, I take everything, even when I do my historical research, and I'm throwing up the quotation marks, even though you can't see that. Even when I do my historical research, I take it with a grain of salt. Because at the end of the day, it's what they put out. It's the history that they choose to release. But when you think about how oxymoronic their argument is, being that they're releasing the history that says this was about German narcissism, to then turn around and reprimand someone who agrees with that sentiment, what other conclusion can you come to except for it was that I can say it because I'm in power. You can't say it because you're Black. It's that simple. There's no other conclusion to be made, in my opinion. She did not show any kind of behavior that suggested she wasn't empathetic with Holocaust victims. She did not do that. She did not speak negatively of their experience. She spoke on what she believed the cause of the Holocaust to be, which is in line with most historians about the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Very, very.
The reality is, what she said is a widespread consensus. It's just one that only certain people are allowed to speak freely. Anyone else needs to stay in their place. It's that simple. And in her case, her Negro place. So to the question, was Whoopi Goldberg being suspended from the View her Negro wake-up call? Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. They were trying to send a message that, hey, we're still in power here. Don't get too comfortable with your quote unquote freedoms. We still control the narratives that are allowed. And she didn't say anything that hasn't been said by historians, accredited historians at that, on this very same subject. So that's my take on it, sir. What say you?
Absolutely. You're right. definitely right. To answer the question, yeah, I mean, it was her Negro wake up call, putting it simple and plain and straightforward. It was her Negro wake up call. They basically were telling her to stay in her place. That's what they do to exert their power. It's, oh no, you're getting a little out of pocket. So we need you to stay in your place or else. It's that type of thing. And as you've already said, and many others have said, she didn't say anything wrong. You know, she didn't say anything that that
hasn't already been said.
Right, that hasn't already been said. She hasn't said anything that was against, you know, Jews or anything of that nature. She didn't. It's not like she doesn't empathize or sympathize. Like she didn't say anything to the, you know, to that effect. So for them to suspend her was just, I could say it was kind of like, I could say it was left field, but at the same time, it really wasn't.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it was a Black woman speaking on the Holocaust, and she was asserting herself on a panel with white women.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think that the optics of that too, they looked at that, and I think that played a role in her suspension, because she's this Black woman who is asserting some type of power on this panel with a bunch of white women who in society people see as them having the power over every other woman, you know, every other, especially minority women.
Exactly. So, and she's unapologetically Black.
Right. And she was unapologetically Black at the time. So like, they were like, oh no, we can't let this Negro do that. Right. So, you know, they had to do something, and they're basically punishing her for her asserting her opinion, her take on what happened, even though her take wasn't incorrect. It wasn't wrong. It was just, no, you're speaking on the Holocaust. You're speaking on Jews, and you're speaking on the history like you're supposed to speak on it, like you have the authority to speak on it, but you don't have the authority.
Exactly.
You know, that's how they're looking at it.
Exactly.
So, yeah. They had to give her that Negro wake up call to let her know, look, we got the power, you know, know your place.
Exactly.
And this is the type of thing that happens to, I'm not going to say happens to all Black people, because obviously I don't know all Black people in their situation, what happens at their job or whatever. But generally speaking, this is the type of thing that happens at jobs, which of course are mainly going to be white-owned corporations, and Black people 9 times, 9.5 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10 are employees. And, you know, at some point, some Black people do get the Negro wake up call to let them know, hey, you don't have power here. We got power.
Exactly.
You know, stay in your place. You know, don't get too loud. Don't, you know, you know, basically that, you know, you better behave or else.
Exactly.
It's that whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. And that's just the thing. Like, it's, for me, I just feel like you can either choose to recognize it for what it is, which is obvious, or you can choose to be willingly ignorant and say, no, they were just making sure she wasn't offensive and etc. Those are the only two options. These subjects don't have any gray areas. You know what it is. You know, if you're of a certain consciousness and intelligence, you know what she said is no different than what has been said by so many others. Right. The obvious difference between her and those others is that she's Black. Right. It's that simple. Right. And you either choose to acknowledge that or you don't. But if you don't, you're choosing to be willingly ignorant. That's a choice. That's a decision that you're making.
Yeah, they're choosing to be willfully ignorant, and they're choosing to at times be apathetic. They're choosing to just say, well, who cares? You know, I'm not dealing with it. I'm not Black. I'm part of the dominant society. This doesn't affect me. So I mean, oh well, you know, they know, and they're conscious, just like you mentioned, that they have a certain consciousness about it, but they don't care. You know, some of these people they just don't care, and they choose to turn a blind eye to it. So you know, that's what happens.
Totally agree. At the end of the day, it's like people honest, those type of people, the folks that choose to ignore what actually happened here, those are the type of people that don't want to leave their box, right? They live in this tightly closed box of reality where, oh no, we've made so much progress and Black people get the same kind of job offers that we do, and things are fair and equal now because the NAACP has made things fair and Black Lives Matter exist and blah blah blah. Get the fuck out of here. Okay.
Yeah.
All
those
of
are
those
covert
things.
races.
Exactly. Like, stop it. Racism is still rampant. Okay. It's that simple. Ahmaud Arbery was unfortunately, a pure cut example of that. And some people will argue, yes, well, they are going to jail for that and etc. But look at how long it took for them to even be arrested for the crime.
Right, exactly.
Brought to justice for the crime. They were literally sitting around for months and months after it occurred without an arrest.
Right. But things had to go viral. Things had to go viral for something to even happen. Exactly.
Like, just cut the bullshit. That's why I say it's willful ignorance. And it's the same applies in this case. You either recognize that she did nothing different than so many other people who are not Black. And the only reason that this was deemed as severe as it was is because she's Black. And furthermore, she's unapologetically Black. It's that simple.
Right, exactly. She was a Black woman asserting herself, and in those spaces, that's a no-no. Yep. that's a big no-no. That's So and real quick, to speak to your point about like people talking about the Holocaust and you know, they get punished if they say anything that could even be taken sideways about it. But like, if people speak on slavery, and they, you know, they'll get a little slap on the wrist. And it all, like, see, it all boils down to power. See, the thing is, the powers that be, they control, you know, they have the power. And in this case, Jews in that industry are in the powerful positions. They're in the powerful positions. So they're able to assert their power because they're in that position and they can. So I think it all boils down to the fact that Black people, at some point, we're going to have to gain power. We're going to have to attain power and get in control of certain industries. And once we do that, and if somebody talks sideways about slavery or anything having to do with Black people, then at that point we could start asserting our power in that case. But that would be the only time where, you know, if somebody says something sideways about Black people, where any type of serious punishment can be afflicted to whoever talks reckless. Like, that's the only time, because if you're working for another group of people, if you're working for a different race of people, they're not gonna punish, you know, they're not gonna, outside of a possible slap on the wrist, they're not gonna go all out to punish people for talking reckless about Black people. They're just not gonna do it. because they don't give a fuck. So
yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Honestly, for a long time I struggled with the argument that people have about who's truly in power, and there's a lot of people that say, oh, it's this group or that group, and etc. Honestly, I think what's really occurring here is there is a conglomerate of white men who are I think it's a mixture. I don't think that is, because look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump is clearly not Jewish.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the reality of it is, and the consensus, in my opinion, for this specific topic is that white men rule the world one way or the other. I honestly believe that it really is, boiling down to it being one major group who's at the helm of the power across the world. And that's white men. Because the reality of it is, like, even white women don't hold as much power as white men. When Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were both running for president, I had this gut feeling that Hillary wouldn't win, despite all of Donald Trump's flaws, despite his blatant statements of racism and etc., because she was a woman. And I just think at the end of the day, the reality of it is that those who are in power are always going to keep everyone else on a short leash. Right? They're going to allow you to have as much room as they want you to have, but it's never going to exceed what they're comfortable with. It's that simple. It doesn't matter who you are. It's that simple. And it's just different. It's different lengths of rope that they give you depending on who you are. Right? Certain people are going to get a little more rope than, say, a Black woman who's unapologetically Black, like Whoopi Goldberg. So, that's my take on that specific portion of it is, there are, certain people say there are specific groups. I don't, the only specific group I feel like I know for certain, and you can just see that by the way the world works, is certain white men. I mean, who are the richest people in the world? Who are in control of the largest companies in the world? White men. It's that simple. And people arguing, oh, then the top 10, there are, Africans and Indians and etc. And okay, but they are still not the richest. They are still not controlling some of the most powerful entities. Look at social media. Social media has overtaken traditional media outlets as the face of information to most human beings on this planet. Who are those companies controlled by? Who are those companies owned by? That's the reality of the world that we live in. Exactly. It's white men. Yeah. So those are just my thoughts on that little piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's white men. The thing is, going back to what you're saying, as far as people like to point a finger at a certain group, but it's really a mixture of different groups. But those different groups are still part of the white race. That's how I see it. It's still white men, regardless, whether it's white Anglo-Saxon, Christian, Jews, Catholics, whoever. It's a mixture. It's not just one particular group, because sometimes you'll hear people say, you'll hear people blame Jews, for example, and it's just like, it's not just Jews. Like, it's not, they like to point a finger at a certain group, and it's just like, it's not about them in particular. It's white men, that's what it boils down to. Let's just simplify it. It's white men. And that's why a lot of times I mention the system of white supremacy. And I learned a lot of that through Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, may she rest in power. Very, very important Black women that people need to look into, you know, especially for Black history, if
Absolutely.
even outside of Black history. But since we were on the subject of Black history and we were talking about, you know, our elders and our ancestors and the great ones who came before us, she's definitely one of them. You know, she spoke on white supremacy. Neely Fuller Jr., who's actually still alive to this day, he wrote the book on white supremacy. So, and I've read that book. So that's why I learned a lot about white supremacy. And I really was able to dive a bit deeper and see that, wow, like white supremacy is a global thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't just learn it through books either, because somebody could come at me and say, well, you can't just, you know, get all your information from a book. You got to experience it in the real world. Well, I do see it in the real world, you know, so I'm getting the information from the books and I'm seeing it and experiencing it in the real world.
Exactly.
It's definitely a real thing. So
exactly.
So yeah, it's definitely we live in a system of white supremacy. That's just the reality. So when it comes down to situations like this with Whoopi Goldberg, that's white supremacy. You know, that's they're asserting their power. That's what that is. And something I've heard from one of the Black thought leaders out there that I listen to a lot. He says white supremacy always breaks its tools. You know, so that's what it did here with Whoopi Goldberg. White supremacy broke its tool. That's pretty much what it was.
Wow.
So
that is a very interesting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely, it for me is a clear-cut sign of stay in your place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like that,
Definitely
it's that simple. Stay in your place. You can only say as much as we deem appropriate for you to say or allow for you to say. You jump out of line in any way, these are the repercussions. And because again, you can look up 1,000 different ways, the multiple people who have made the same assessments about the true cause of the Holocaust. It was about German narcissism for those folks who were in power. It was about Hitler's hatred towards anyone who wasn't, in his eyes, worthy of being equivalent to Germans. And to insinuate that it was anything other than that, or that that wasn't the case is absolutely ridiculous, because it is the general consensus amongst most historians. There were so many German people who didn't even agree with Hitler, but who went along with the ideology because it was what was in place at the time.
Right.
And it was so much a contrived notion by him that he was just able to hypnotize people with, that that's really the basis for tyranny and dictatorship in the world we live in today. When you look at, is someone a tyrant, is someone a dictator, you look at, do they have a similar skill set to Hitler? I mean, that's the reality of it. He was really the forefather of dictatorships. He was the forefather of what can happen when someone has a certain ability to manipulate and charm people into a general consensus, no matter how horrendous it is. He could sell his agenda like no one else in history has been able to. He could get people to identify a cause, right? Look at the times that were happening. It was difficult social economic times for almost every country across the world at that time, right? What he did was took all of his hatreds and his, just pure I don't even know what the proper term to describe how Hitler felt about communities that weren't German, right? That weren't Aryan. And he really was able to just articulate it in a way that made people at that time, German people at that time, connect with his ideology. And so what Whoopi Goldberg was trying to display was exactly that. That's what that was about. That was the core of the Holocaust. It's just ridiculous. And like I've said, enough already on here. It was hey, stay in your place. Don't get out of line. So, to answer your question, it absolutely was her Negro wake-up call, to say the least.
That's right. It most certainly was her Negro wake-up call. And before we get to the next subject, because I know we got to get to that real quick, I just want to add that basically the thing is with Whoopi Goldberg and others like her, I think what happens is they get into these spaces with white people. They get proximity to white people, to whiteness, really. They're able to sit at these tables, these round tables with white people, whether it be white men or white women, in Whoopi's case, white women. And it's like they almost feel like they're white themselves.
Get too comfortable.
Right, they get too comfortable. Exactly. You said it right there. They get too comfortable and they feel they could start saying certain things and start asserting themselves a certain way. It's like they feel like they're like an honorary white person or something, or they got some kind of, honorary minority status. And it's just like, no, you are still the Black woman at a table with white women.
Exactly.
You didn't realize your
place and all that.
Yeah, right. You didn't realize your place in the pecking order, because that's the thing. There's still a pecking order when it's all said and done. And I think that was one of the issues too. It wasn't just about what she said, even though that was the thing that people have been talking about, what she said. But I think it was the optics too, and the fact that she forgot where she stood in the pecking order.
Right.
So, and I think, again, this isn't just about Whoopi Goldberg. It happened to her, but I think it's a thing with other Black women as well. And my message to other Black women listening to this who work with white women, or who sit at the table with, a predominantly white female group, there's nothing wrong with that, but just realize, you fall within a certain place in the pecking order. You're not a white woman. You're not, you don't have an honorary white status or anything like that. So you're still the Negro that's at the table, pretty much. So that
it reminds me of Kanye line, even if you in the bed, you still a nigga in a coupe.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that sums it up right there. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your net worth is, how rich, how famous you are still Black, period. So you fall within a certain place in the pecking order. So regardless of your status, that's just what it is. And I think some people, and when I say some people, I'm talking about black people. Some Black people tend to forget that. They get in these spaces and they, like you said before, they get a little too comfortable, and then boom, you got to get the Negro wake-up call. They got to put you back in your place.
Exactly. Totally agree. Yep. Definitely think we're on the same page on that perspective. And, I definitely am not choosing to be willfully ignorant on this. That's obviously what happened here. And for anyone who disagrees, I feel bad for you, because I can't live in a world where I'm purposely choosing to ignore what's right in front of my face.
Same here. Same here.
So awesome. Good stuff, sir.
All right.
What we got next?
All right. So the next question, last but most certainly not least, The question is Joe Rogan a racist? Yep, simple and straightforward. Is Joe Rogan a racist?
So let me tell you about this guy, Joe Rogan. So to answer the question, is Joe Rogan a racist? In my opinion, there is absolutely no doubt that regardless of whether or not he has committed racist atrocities, he has definitely shown behaviors that are racist. He has absolutely done that unequivocally, no questions about showing behaviors that are racist. And the reason I say, the reason I'm not saying he is a racist versus showing behaviors that are racist is because I do think there are certain levels to racism. And I think even though there are people who can show certain behaviors of a racist, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will go to certain extents. So let me elaborate. So whether or not, and I've heard this argument, right? I've recently been discussing this topic and people have said to me, well, or they've asked the question, well, did he use the N word with the A on the end or ER on the end? Because it makes a difference. And I'm like, listen, you're absolutely right. To a certain extent, there are different connotations to that word, depending on whether it ends in A or E. The point is, it's not for white people to say either. That's the reality of it. The reason that there is a different connotation between the A and the ER is that Black people reclaimed it to essentially, for lack of a better term, turn a negative into a positive. Turn a term of racism and oppression to a somewhat term of endearment. We've earned that right because of our history. White people know that it is offensive to use that term, regardless of whether they make the argument, well, Black people are using that term all the time and it's in music and etc. And let me speak on that. Yes, they are absolutely right to a certain extent that, especially in hip hop music, that term is used quite frequently. And there is even a specific intent to market some hip hop music to as many communities as possible in order to sell. I'm not going to deny that, right? Anyone who says that hip hop artists are not trying to sell as many records as possible, whether it's white people or Spanish people or Black people who's buying it or not, is full of shit. The game is about making money these days. It's not like it was when, rap was first invented and when hip hop was first born in the late 70s and 80s. We all know that. It's not the same. Back then, its intent was to uplift the people. Its intent was during the crack era to give people a sign of hope. MCs used the music as a platform for unity. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's not the case anymore. Anyone who's trying to deny that, again, willful ignorance. I don't subscribe to willful ignorance. In 2022, I'm not saying that no artist does that, because I do believe there are those who are still about that, who are still about unifying the people, who are still about bringing certain consciousness to the Black community. But unfortunately, that does not appear to be the majority anymore. So I said all of that to say, yes, to a certain extent, I understand the argument. Well, hip hop artists and etc. are using that word frequently and they're marketing towards all different kinds of communities. So it doesn't make sense that we don't get to say it. Cut the bullshit. You know why you can't say it. Mm-hmm. You know why it's offensive to us, whether you use the A or the hard ER at the end. And Joe Rogan himself, this is a direct quote from Joe Rogan, said, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that. Never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that. Now, I haven't said it in years. Those words were Joe Rogan's words to the T, verbatim. So he is admitting, he is acknowledging that it was inappropriate for him to use them. Yet this incident didn't happen once. This incident didn't happen twice. This incident didn't happen 3 times. This incident happened multiple times.
Say multiple times.
Multiple times over 12 years. Give me a fucking break. This is not oops, I made a mistake. You don't make the same mistake multiple times over the years. And then what did he follow up with? To add insult to injury, okay? This motherfucker literally on one of his episodes compared Black neighborhoods to the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. Yeah. That's
Black neighborhoods to the world, to the environment of the Planet of the Apes. Give me a fucking break. At very minimum, his behaviors are racist as fuck. Now, do I think Joe Rogan is going to go out and find a Black person and hang them? No, I don't think that. I think in his mind, he had a certain leeway where he could get away with being passive, aggressive, racist. And I know you're probably thinking, what the fuck? Or people are thinking, what does that mean? I'm gonna tell you what it means. Passive, aggressive racists are people who feel that way, who have a certain disdain towards Black people, but are conscious enough to know you can't get away with the same shit you could 50 years ago. So they do it in these little slight microaggressions and these little comments and all of this other bullshit, because they don't have the gall to say what they really want to say, because they know what the consequences may be. He is a passive, aggressive racist. At least that's what his behavior has shown, in my opinion. Passive, aggressive racism. And so for me, if you take a look at what has occurred, the stone cold facts, he has used that language, I'm going to say in his term. He has said that word multiple times. He has compared Black neighborhoods to the Planet of the Apes. He has admitted that he knows it to be inappropriate, yet he continued to do it. So how can this question be anything other than yes? How could the answer to this be anything other than yes? At minimum, he has shown racist behaviors. You can't deny that. No one can. And all of these artists who are pulling their music and etc., some of them are pulling their music, because let's be clear here. People want to say, oh, I support such and such artists because they're pulling their music from Spotify. Okay, let's be clear. Some artists are pulling their music from Spotify, who is his streaming service, right? Who has the sole exclusive rights to his podcast. Some of them are pulling it because Joe Rogan, they feel like he gave out misinformation about COVID-19 vaccinations.
Yeah, that was
it is not. Yeah, it's you want to think your favorite celebrity is just so on par and woke and politically correct. Cut the bullshit. They're more concerned about the fact that he made comments about COVID-19 vaccinations that they don't like. Right, because a lot of them are sponsors of that initiative, right? They're sponsors of that agenda.
Right.
So that's the reason why some of them poured it. And then there are others who have come out and specifically spoken against his comments, like India Arie, and she gave specific examples of his inappropriate language, his terms, and etc. She's like, I don't want to hear any excuse. It was inappropriate for him to say it, blah, blah, blah. So, to summarize and to answer the question specifically, is Joe Rogan a racist? My answer is, at minimum, he has showcased racist behaviors that are unacceptable. Will he go out and hang someone, a Black person, or I can't say that I think he will. But that does not take away from the fact that he has gone way beyond, oops, I made a non-PC mistake, to I am being passive aggressive racist, which I think he has definitely shown that that's what he has done. He has been passive aggressive racist.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my thoughts on it.
All right. Well, well, no, I mean, I agree with most of what you said. The only thing I might see a bit differently, and I will answer the question directly, but the only thing I probably see a little bit differently is the race, like the racist part, I guess the definition or the varying degrees of it. Because I think the way people tend to look at racism, they tend to look at it from an extremist point of view, or they tend to look at it as this extreme thing. And going back to like the varying degrees of racism, like it's not always extreme, like somebody saying the N-word with the hard ER, or somebody hanging somebody, or the KKK or neo-Nazis. I think that's how a lot of people look at it. When they hear about somebody being a racist, they think of those extremes. And my thing is, somebody could be a racist and they don't do any of that stuff. They probably never said the N-word in their whole life. They probably never had thoughts of lynching anybody. They have no interest in being part of the KKK. So, that person could still be a racist. It's just that they're more of a closet racist. That's the term I like to use. They're more of a closeted racist. They're just more the type to just exhibit microaggressions. And it goes back to, what you said about passive aggressive. They're just passive aggressive. That's still racism, in my opinion. It's still a form of racism. So to me, it doesn't have to be to the point where it's this extreme, where they're this extremist. It can just be to the point where they're covert, which there's a ton of covert racism. They could be somebody in a business suit looking real sharp, and they speak, a certain way, and they've never said the N-word ever. They carry themselves a certain way, and they act like they like Black people, but then in reality they don't. So it could be to that degree. Right. So that's just how I look at it. When I hear people talk about racism, it seems like oftentimes they think of that just extreme example. And I just want to be like, it's not just that. Like that's a fair point.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. I mean, because the reality of it is, yes, I do absolutely agree with you that racism doesn't have to just be the extreme level. Right. But in my opinion, I also think that there is a difference between being conscious of prejudices, which could be construed as racism, and being a true racist. Because like some people could have, because one of the things that I truly believe in is unintentional prejudices, right? I'm a firm believer that racism is taught. It's not a natural behavior. Babies aren't born racist.
Yeah, it's a result. Taught.
Exactly. It's a result of their environment. It's something that they're taught. So if you consider, and this is, let me be clear, this is not in any way to excuse racist behavior. It is the farthest from the truth. However, if you take into consideration that some people have spent their entire lives around family members and et cetera, who were racist and have shown certain behaviors and et cetera, it really is for lack of a better term, it is a decision, a conscious decision that they have to make to stray away from those toxic ideologies of their family to see equality is deserved by everyone. And sometimes while they're on that journey, there can be unintentional prejudices that they're still showing. I'll give you an example. There was this study that was done by little kids, or not by little kids, but it was with little kids, where they took little white kids, little black kids, little Spanish kids, little girls and boys, and they showed them two different dolls. And they asked them which doll was the princess.
I've seen that.
And yeah, almost all of them chose the white doll. The white doll with the blonde hair. Now, obviously, those black kids weren't taught to be racist, right? But again, unintentional prejudices is a real thing. So that's why I said, to a certain extent, there is a level to racism, or at minimum, a level to prejudices, which is a part of racism. So I think, and I think it can go either way, right? I think it absolutely can be that someone is racist even if they haven't gone to the extremes. Totally agree there. But I also think there are some cases where it's not racism, it's unintentional prejudice. And it's a result of society, of their environment, and of generally trying to navigate their way through a path coming away from that, or on a path coming away from ideologies that have been a part of their lives, especially from, childhood to an adult. If that's all they've seen, even if they've recognized, hey, this isn't right, we shouldn't treat people this way, everyone's equal, and etc., there's still some unintentional prejudices that could be there that is not necessarily equivalent to racism.
Yeah, and I agree with that point that you made. That's true. And the thing is, there are levels to it. There are varying degrees, because obviously racism isn't just this one thing. It's not like one, it's definitely levels and degrees to it. And, of course, there's the extremists, the one that's on the far, we'll just say the far right, and then there's somebody on the other end of the spectrum who is a little bit more docile or nicer or whatever word we want to use, maybe the quieter one. They're not as extreme. They're just not that extremist. But again, they'll just resort to microaggressions, really, or things along the lines of calling the police on Black people, things like that. They might not run up to a Black person and scream out the N-word to them, but they'll be in their house looking through the window at Black people or a Black person and might just want to call the police because of so-called suspicious activity, even though that Black person or persons could just be walking around in the neighborhood that they live in, something to that effect. So with Joe Rogan, going back to Joe Rogan, I looked at the clips of him saying the N-word. Now, I'm going to just put this out there. I haven't seen all of the episodes in their entirety. And the thing is, I'm the type of person, I like to get the full scope. I like to get the full context of things. Even though in this case, it's like, do I really need the full context of this white dude saying the N-word this many times? Like it really, you know, it's just, it really doesn't matter. But what made me think that is because what I find interesting with this whole thing is that there are Black people defending this dude. Of course, there's white people defending him, but there's a fair amount, I'm gonna just say a fair amount of Black people who are sticking up for Joe Rogan. And that's what I find to be interesting. So that's what made me say, it'll be cool if I could just see some of these shows, because I'm not gonna sit and watch all of his shows, to be honest. I'm not gonna sit there and watch everything, but just to see a couple of shows to see where he said it, what was the context, you know. But from the clips, as far as if we're gonna talk context, he wasn't saying the N-word like at a Black person, like calling them that. Like he wasn't hurling it at them to insult them. You know, it was him with other white people, white men in this case, on his show, and they were just saying it. And the other white guys were saying it too. And they were just having conversations like about, you know, whatever they were having conversations about, and they would just say it. And I had to sit back and like say, damn, you know, these dudes are real comfortable saying this shit. You know, they're just real comfortable saying it. So when a white person is that comfortable, I come to the conclusion that they are racist. They have to be, because a white person who is not racist, because of course there are white people who will tell you, I'm not racist. Okay, well, actions speak louder than words. Right. For me, it's like, you could keep telling me you're not racist, but I need to see that you're not racist. So, you know, they could say that they're not racist. Basically, a white person that is not racist would not even entertain saying that word. Right. I'm gonna just put it like that. I think a white person who is not racist, who really is not racist, would consciously know not to say that word. They would always make a conscious effort not to say that word. You can't be a white person who's not racist and just comfortably say that word. Right. Especially knowing the history, especially being conscious, because Joe Rogan's he's not a stupid guy. He's not a dummy. You know, he knows some shit. And I've seen his show a few times, because he had his podcast on YouTube. There's still some episodes on there. I know his podcast is mainly on Spotify, but I've watched a few of his shows before, and seen some of the guests he's had and things like that. So he's not a dummy. So he knows what the fuck, he knows what the fuck he's saying. You know, he's not ignorant. We'll just say he's a smart dude. Yeah. And he's pretty knowledgeable on certain things, you could tell. So somebody like that saying the word, that's no accident. That's not totally agree. That's not a slip of the tongue. That's not at all. You know, and he's got guests on there who are medical professionals, and
especially as many times as he said it. Like it's one thing if he said it once and he's like apologetic and he's like, okay, I understand the error of my ways. It doesn't happen again. He has said this multiple times over 12 years. Right. And when you couple that with the comments he made about, Black neighborhoods, the comparison of Black neighborhoods to the landscape of the planet, are you fucking kidding me? Right. It would be crazy to assert that he was not intentional with these actions. Of course he fucking was. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that whole thing with the Planet of the Apes, that right there, I was just like, okay, that's like, I mean, yeah, the N-word shit is racist, but this shit right here is definitely racist. Like you can't explain your way out of that one. You can't say it was out of context. You can't, you can't say it was out of context. Like that was simple and plain. He was telling a story.
about how he was trying to go to the movies, and him and his friends, I guess, stepped out of the cab or whatever, and they were lost, and they basically felt like they were in the Planet of the Apes.
He said that?
Yeah, that's pretty much how he explained it. I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but basically him and a group of friends were out somewhere. I believe it was Philly. I could be wrong. I'm not too sure exactly where it was. I want to say it was Philly, but either way, they were out in a city somewhere, and they took a cab because they wanted to go see the movie Planet of the Apes. They got out the cab, I believe. They got lost, and they were in a predominantly Black neighborhood. They saw a whole bunch of Black people around, and he basically was like, well, I felt like we were in Africa. It's like we're in the Planet of the Apes. You know, comparing.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, that's how he framed it.
Know that?
Yeah, he framed it in that way because he even mentioned Africa too. So he was talking about Africa.
What?
And, yeah, he mentioned Africa, and then he basically said, "Yeah, we're around all these Black people, and this just looks like the Planet of the Apes." He framed it in that way.
Okay, I retract my statement.
Yeah.
I apologize. I was not aware of the details of that specific scenario. If he said that in that context, that is some of the most racist shit I've ever heard of. He was actually in a Black neighborhood.
Yeah,
he compared it to the Planet of the Apes.
Right. That's where that comment came from. He compared the Black neighborhood to the Planet of the Apes. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, fuck you, Joe Rogan. How about that?
Yeah, so
wow.
I mean that's real fucking racist. So yeah, once I heard that, I was just like, dude, like
yeah, I didn't know that much. I didn't know that, like, the background. I thought, like, perhaps, like, I didn't even know what the story was related around that. I just saw that incident occurred because I don't follow Joe Rogan's podcast. I remember him from being the guy from Fear Factor.
Right. We remember him from Fear Factor. Yep.
Right. And then recently, like, I've been getting into UFC more, and I've seen him, like, commentating in UFC.
Yeah, that's he's doing that too.
Exactly. That's the extent of what I've known Joe Rogan for. Fear Factor, and now he's a commentator in UFC. I've not followed his podcast or anything, so this story is what brought me, to the limelight of what's been happening. But to hear that specific incident, the details of that specific incident, that's fucking ridiculous. That is blatant racism.
Oh yeah, it's blatant. And then the thing is too, he's even the guests he's had on there, from the few episodes I've seen, they talk about race and IQ, and I mean that's a whole nother thing. I'm not gonna get too much into that. Yeah, but they do. How should I explain it? So they're at least from what I've seen so far, they're not on there like, oh, well, white people are smarter and, Black people are just dumb. They're not framing it in that way, but they speak on the fact that, I guess at some point in time in history, it was said that Asians had a higher IQ.
Yeah. They
had the highest IQ, whites after them. And then Blacks were the last ones, pretty much.
Right.
They had the lowest IQ. So they've spoken on that. They've had those types of conversations. And the way I look at it, when white people have those types of conversations, my antennas go up.
Yeah.
Because those types of conversations, that line of thinking, that train of thought leads into eugenics.
Yeah.
The eugenics movement, where we're talking about exterminating Black people because of low IQ. So, and I'm not saying that's what these guys said, because like I said, I never seen the full episodes. I've just seen clips here and there. So I'm not going to, accuse them of going to that extent of saying that extreme stuff right there. But that type of conversation it leads into that, that way of thinking. And their audience, come on, his audience are right wingers. Let me just put it like that too, because I've seen the people that talk about his show and who rant and rave about how great it is and this, then the third. And he's even had a member of the Proud Boys on there before.
What?
Yeah. So, and I've heard he's had some other alt-right dudes on there, like people who are part of the alt-right. I've heard that he's had a couple of them dudes on his show. So with all of that in mind, he's catering to a certain base. I'm gonna just put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to be in that space and kind of cater to that base, I'm gonna just say it like this. I mean, he's gotta be a racist.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Okay. Let me just say, as a grown ass woman, I have no problem admitting when I am wrong or retracting my statement when it needs to be retracted. I need to retract my initial assertion that perhaps he is just showing racist behavior and state clearly that, in my opinion, he is in fact a racist. I did not know any of those things that you just described. And that is behavior that is undeniably racist.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
oh my gosh.
It's nothing to be apologetic about or anything. You didn't watch this stuff enough to see all this that I'm talking about. But the thing is, I've peeped this show a few times because he's been around for a while. As we've said, he's done Fair Factor. He was doing the UFC thing. I know a big thing about him is he's a black belt. He was doing mixed martial arts. He's a comedian. So he's been in the game for a minute. So he's well known. And I knew about his podcast for a while. It's been out for a while. I even remember watching a episode with him and Candace Owens. I know that's
wow.
Yeah. But we already know what side of the coin she's on. But
Jeez Louise. Yeah, if any of that, if an inkling of what you just said is true about the actions that he has taken, those are clear-cut signs of racism. That's crazy that he could even be just trying to deny otherwise when you have that many incidents behind each other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, to answer the question directly, I say yes. But I think it was a little I'm not gonna say tough, or because it wasn't even tough to answer. It's just simple and straightforward. Yeah, I think he's racist. But just seeing a fair group of black people defending him, I'm just like, okay, what am I missing? Because if you guys have been tuned into his show, obviously these people are tuned in more than we are. All right. So they've seen all this stuff that I mentioned and then some. So what exactly do y'all really like about this dude so much? That's the thing that kind of trips me out a little bit. I'm just like, okay, because I read people's comments online and stuff, and I think it's funny, because at the end of the day, this shit doesn't bother me to the point of losing sleep. The whole N-word thing, or any of this racist shit. Really, I don't lose sleep over it because I know the truth. I know, when people say these things or do certain things, it's in their nature. It's in some people's nature. And I've come to accept that. My thing is, I'd rather somebody just be honest and say that they are racist, rather than
I like my racism out in the open.
Just be real about it. If I would tell a white person, if you're racist, you might as well just tell me. Just be straight up about it. I want to know that you're racist. Instead of you trying to hide it. So,
but exactly. I totally agree. Yeah, I like my races out in the open. You know, show me who you are from the very beginning, so
Yeah, show
I'm
me who you
aware.
are.
We don't want any secret racist, actions occurring. That's just crazy. I had no idea that some of that was occurring with him because I don't follow him in any way whatsoever. So, wow.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think he's been on my radar for the past few years or so or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is because I'm on YouTube a lot. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that I'm subscribed to and I listen to their content. And of course, there's people who do their podcasts and I tune into that. And his stuff tends to pop up in my feed at times. And sometimes there's other people who speak on him and speak on the, certain clips or whatever. And some of the people that I listen to have spoken on him and have been like, yeah, this dude's a suspected white supremacist. Like, this dude's a racist.
Wow.
I used to hear it from other people, but at the time I didn't know a whole lot. I was just like, okay, let me see for myself. Let me watch some of his stuff. And, because I like to make judgments for myself. I don't want to just go off of what people say. So, some of the people that I listen to have been saying it. They've been like, yo, we've been telling y'all, this dude is, he's a suspected white supremacist, because they mentioned how he would have people from the alt-right on his show or whatever. So yeah, and I remember seeing a dude from the Proud Boys on his show. So I mean, it's like you're having certain guests on your show, all right, and then you have a certain fan base, you have a certain base that follows you and listens to you or whatever. So all that's telling right there.
Right.
All that's telling.
Jeez Louise, that's you definitely you definitely put me on, because I don't, outside of the research that I did for our session tonight, I'm just not very familiar with his work, besides Fear Factor. And I was like, oh, when I started watching UFC, I was like, oh, look, there's that guy from Fear Factor, so
right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Those behaviors just, they exemplify all of the others, to the argument that he definitely has some racist tendencies, to say the very, very least. And by that end, can be deemed a racist based on those behaviors. If those behaviors are accurate as described, then he cannot deny that. And that's crazy. I'm surprised that Spotify hasn't tried to distance themselves from him. This is like, how far do you think this is going to go, as for, or how long do you think we're going to allow him to continue to have a platform when he's this blatantly racist? Do you really want to lose all of your Black customers?
Well,
I can't imagine they do.
Well, the way I look at it with Spotify, the only thing I could say, and I'm just giving my thoughts, my opinion on it, they know that Joe Rogan has a big fan base.
Yeah.
The dude has a big following. I'm gonna just put it like that. And I've seen it. He has a strong enough following. So they're looking at that. And Spotify is still part of the capitalist machine. They're still capitalists. They're just about money. They're not about morality or what's right, or, they're about money. And if this dude's podcast is generating X amount of dollars, he's got X amount of people tuned in or whatever, they're not going to get rid of him. Like, they're just not.
You think they could sustain losing all of their Black subscribers, though? Well, I'd have to imagine that Black people are probably one of their top demographics. Everyone I know uses Spotify. I can't imagine they could afford to, like, if we all literally decided to unify against Spotify and pull our subscriptions, I have to imagine that would impact their pockets deeper than they think.
Well, yeah, I think that would, but here's the thing. There's at least enough Black people who are fans of him So getting galvanizing all Black people definitely won't happen.
No,
I'm gonna put it like that,
Totally agree.
So
totally agree.
If you got a certain amount of Black people that are tuned in and fans of this dude, and then of course you got a ton of white people and you got Asians and Latinos or whoever else that are fans of this guy. Yeah, they're not pulling the plug on him.
That's very good point. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, they're not. They see. I think with these companies, they see that if you have a big enough following, then a lot of times they'll just say, we're not going to cancel him. We're not going to deplatform him or her. They're not going to do that because if you look at it this way, Dave Chappelle, Netflix still wants to work with them. And,
4 more. They've signed him up for 4 more specials.
Right, 4 more specials, and of course, people try to cancel him. The LGBT was going at his neck, and it wasn't working because enough people fuck with Dave Chappelle. So they're like, Netflix is like, nah, we're not canceling him. And I think this is the same case with Joe Rogan. I think too many people support him. I think once the numbers are on their side as far as support, they're not canceling him. They're not gonna, it would have to be a ton of people who just say, you know what, we're done with Spotify. Until you get rid of this guy, we're gonna cancel our subscription. We're gonna take our music off or whatever content.
Right.
It has to get to that point.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that, but it would have to get to that point. Yeah,
totally agree with you. That's a fair point. That's fucking crazy. Dude is just bold as he want to be, huh?
Right, and then that was the reason for my answer, because I actually know a couple Black folks who fuck with Joe Rogan, and they'll probably hear this, and yeah, I know they'll probably hear this episode and. They're like, damn, you just think he's a racist? And I'm like, well, if dude's this comfortable, I mean,
if the shoe fits.
Right. If the shoe fits, wear it. Right.
Jeez.
He's racist until he shows otherwise. So, but from the evidence presented so far.
Right. Exactly.
It's clear, at least for me, it's clear as day.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like, I totally was not aware of some of those incidents. I mean, because it's one thing if, again, the situation happens once, he's apologetic, he understands the errors of his ways, he makes conscious efforts to change those. That's not what's happening here.
Yeah.
Homeboy repeated the same behaviors over and over and over again.
Right.
Went into different circumstances and elaborated further with his whole being in the Black neighborhood, making comparisons to the Planet of the Apes situation. Yeah. Like, come on. Like, he's going out of his way to showcase his racist behaviors. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. And he blamed that part, the whole Planet of the Apes thing. He basically was like, yeah, I was just being a comedian. And it's like, dude.
Give me a fucking break. And you know what they say, that the funniest jokes normally have some truth behind them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Exactly. So if that was in his mind the first place to go from a comedic aspect, that's because he has some belief in that. He has some truth behind that.
I agree 100%. And I've always said that jokes come from a place of seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could come off as a joke or somebody could be trying to be funny, but when people say certain things, it's still coming from a certain place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When someone shows you who they are, you believe them. It's that simple.
Right.
Wow. Crazy stuff. Yeah. That was definitely a shocker. I'm definitely going to be looking more into his past behaviors, because I think for me, now we get into a different area of the issue and talking about what drives the Black people that do support him to continue to support him despite these behaviors. I mean, it's like, are you going to ignore certain aspects so that you can continue to identify with what you do like about him? It's like, oh, okay, even though this person, and I'm not saying he is, let me make clear, this is just an example I'm giving. Even though this person is the purest of evil, he says certain things that I like, so I'm going to ignore his other evil activities. Like, I
think that's what it is, though.
I can't do that. Like, I don't know how people can do that. It's like, you know what example comes to mind? R. Kelly. People are like, R. Kelly is the king of R&B, and he made great R&B music for all that time. And I'm still listening to R. Kelly. R. Kelly was literally having sex with children, 14-year-olds and shit that he knew to be underage. For me, the consensus that it's okay to still listen to his music because those two are not related. That how well he was in music versus what he did as R. Kelly is not related is bullshit. Because either way, you are supporting him. So if you look at it from this perspective, the support that he received from being R. Kelly, the artist, allowed him to commit those atrocities. He had a certain, he had more availability to his victims because of the support he received. True. It's bullshit. It's bullshit in my opinion. And so it's the same principle with Joe Rogan. Like, you can't make the argument, well, he's not always racist. Sometimes he identifies with this and this. Okay, what you are doing right now is enabling his racism. Because by him being able to say some Black people support me, I must not be racist because some Black people, get the fuck out of here. That doesn't take away from your behaviors. It reminds me of that saying, don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. Right.
Yeah. I also look at Black Joe Rogan fans as like Black Trump supporters. That's how I look at them too, because you've had Black Trump supporters who, I mean, regardless of what Trump has said, and we've all heard the stuff he said, the racist shit that he said in the past or whatever, and he still has Black people who fuck with him. I mean, it's just, you know
what? I totally agree with that, but I actually have another group that baffles me even more than Black Trump supporters. It's Mexican Trump supporters. Because I believe everyone has the right to, this is America. Everyone has the right to live their lives as they see fit and support whoever they want to support from a political standpoint. But Trump has made it very clear that he has disdain for Mexicans. He's made that very clear. It makes no sense to me. My brain can't wrap around Mexican Trump supporters because he has gone out of his way. He has called them thugs or I forget what the specific word it was. Yeah, he's insinuated that they're rapists. The fucking ICE camps that he put up, and he had little children in these camps I mean, without some basic human rights allotted to them. I don't understand folks who are Mexican who are Trump supporters. I don't understand it.
Yeah,
it doesn't register for me. For Black people, I mean, it's not saying that I necessarily agree with it either, but to a certain extent, he has tried to portray this image of being, of not being a racist and etc. He had The Apprentice where he had that lady, I don't know her name, but
Omarosa.
Yeah, Omarosa. She was like his right-hand woman and all of that stuff, and etc. So to a certain extent, I can understand why some Black people may say, oh, he's not right, and etc. But there has been no such situation for Mexican people. He has shown clear and concise disdain for Mexican people. And so I don't understand it. I'm literally confused by it.
I feel you. I mean, I think what it is too is that I don't know if it was just Mexicans, but I'm gonna just say Latinos. Trump had Latino supporters. Regardless of which Latin country they're from, he's had some Latino supporters. And what has come to my attention is that some Latinos see themselves as white. Some Latinos identify as white. So in them identifying as white and identifying with whiteness, and then identifying with white supremacy, they're going to identify with Trump. If that makes sense. So some of them could look past his comments about Mexicans or immigrants or whoever. They can look past that because they identify with whiteness. They're Latino because we have to remember Latino is an ethnicity. Hispanic is an ethnicity. It's not a race. So
no, not at all.
You got Black Latinos, you got white Latinos. So you got the white.
But I've only ever heard him make comments specifically against Mexicans, though. I've never heard him generalizing it because, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if Trump has enough knowledge to understand that there are multiple ethnicities within the Latino community. I don't know that Trump recognizes that, and I've heard him. I mean, that's not to say that he doesn't have disdain for those other Latino ethnicities in that community as well, because he probably does. But I'm speaking to the fact that he has made specific comments about Mexicans. Right. And so that's what I'm trying to understand, like that particular group, because I totally agree with you. There is way more to the Latino community than Mexican people, but I haven't heard him make generalizations about the Latino community. I've heard him make general racist comments about Mexicans. Right. So when a Mexican person tells me that, they're a Trump supporter, I'm just trying to understand what in them identifies with him, despite the fact that he has shown clear disdain for them.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely hear what you're saying. And I think it just goes back to what I was saying about Latinos. So he might be he made these comments, these specific comments towards Mexicans, but Mexicans, of course, as we know, are part of the Latino community. Right. So him making those comments, some Latinos who aren't even Mexican could be offended. But, absolutely. But they're not. And I from what I've seen, I'm just speaking for what I've seen. I mean, because I don't know any Mexicans personally who were supporting Trump like that, but I do know about like Latinos. I don't know exactly where they were from or whatever, but they were supporting Trump. There probably could be some, whether they're from Cuba or Peru or Argentina or wherever, that don't even fuck with Mexicans like that. And, his comments towards Mexicans didn't bother them, so it could be to that extent. But the Mexicans that specifically do support him, the Mexicans that do support Trump, they're probably the ones who are more Americanized, I would say. They're probably not the ones who just crossed the border, so to speak. They're probably the ones who've been in America longer and identify with America. And going back to, Latinos identifying as white, they're probably the ones who identify as white. So in turn, they identify with the system of white supremacy. So that's what I think as far as why those particular Mexicans might support Trump. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that, that could be, that's the conclusion I come to, really.
Sure. Yeah, I can see how you could come to that conclusion. I definitely think that unfortunately there is a invisible separation of minority communities, right? Where there's even some minority communities that look down on others. I totally believe and know for a fact that is also something that is happening in our society, in the US especially. And, that's unfortunate. And it's just, for me, the entire point that I was getting to is that I don't have the ability to shut one eye and only focus out of the other. I see the picture in its entirety. I have to see the full picture. And I've never had the ability to be willfully ignorant. I've never, to not recognize that Trump is a racist and that he has specific disdain towards certain races over others is choosing to be willful ignorant. And I can't abide by that. And just getting back to the topic that was at hand, Joe Rogan's behavior is very similar to Trump's. And for those Black folks who are continuing to support them, to each their own. But for me, I can't choose to ignore blatant behavior. And this, what he has done, is true to form if that is the way that these events have occurred, racism.
That's
simple.
Yeah, I agree. And real quick, I would just say that I think for some people, and really we could say all people, but I think the people that they follow, the celebrities that they like, there's certain deal breakers for people. Let me just put it like that. So people follow certain celebrities and they're able to excuse the BS that some of these celebrities have with them. And for some of these people, we'll say the Black Joe Rogan supporters, for example, racism isn't a deal breaker for them.
Right.
Unfortunately, for some Black people, racism isn't really a deal breaker. While for other Black people, it's a definite deal breaker.
Right.
But for these particular Black folks, it's not a deal breaker. They don't see the big deal in it. There's some Black people who don't really care. They don't give a shit. It's outside of Joe Rogan too, with other things going on in society as well. They don't really give a damn, really. Exactly. As long as it doesn't affect them personally.
Yeah,
they don't really care. For them, racism isn't a deal breaker.
Right.
I mean, it's to me, it's obvious. It's just not a big enough deal breaker for them. While for some people, it's going to be a deal breaker. So,
definitely agree. Well, yes, thank you for taking the time to break some of that down for me, sir, because I definitely was was not aware of some of that related to Joe Rogan, but I would definitely say, there is no question with those kind of behaviors that those were definitely racist behavior. So it's unfortunate that this guy thinks that it's acceptable and that he could get away with it. And hopefully, he's understanding the consequences of his actions, but that's yet to be seen. So. Right. Wow. Definitely a great coverage on that one.
Right. Yeah, definitely a good topic overall.
Absolutely agree. Great question. So, all right. Well, this definitely, I think, was absolutely amazing inaugural session to kick off the year with.
Yes.
To all our listeners out there, we just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your continuous support. And, if you haven't yet already, please log on to YouTube. Go ahead and hit that like and the subscribe button. We definitely want to keep that content flowing to you that allow you to stay up to date on all of our episodes and sessions that are released. As you all know, we're always talking about the latest, the hottest, the most relevant topics. And we just continue to appreciate you all support.
Yes, we do.
So, Mr. PAT, if you want to drop that information where anyone can contact you if they need your great services, go ahead and give them that info, sir.
Yeah. thepatchannel.com. You could go there, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Click the links and subscribe, follow, like, share, watch, listen to the content. Also, my group, Third World, has a mixtape that's out right now called Linguistic Dialects. Out right now. The link is also provided in thepatchannel.com. Third World, that's the hip hop group right there. My guys, Mike Ruckus and E Breeze. Yeah, all three of us put out this mixtape and we're getting a lot of great feedback. So for those of you out there who's into real hip hop, you know, you're a hip hop purist, you're into lyrics. Of course, we got the beats, the melodies, the hooks, all that. Then you gotta fuck with this group. You gotta fuck with Third World. So
absolutely.
Thepatchannel.com. That's it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the real in the hip hop game right now. It's not a lot of that authenticity out there. So definitely glad to hear that you're sticking with it. Y'all check out Third World, get with that real authentic hip hop flavor. Again, to all our listeners, thank you for the continuous support. And until next time, we say peace.
Peace.